All right, and hello back to the channel. This video is going to be short and sweet, and we are going to take a look at how to actually create that animation for the door we have been talking about in our existing videos. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we can get started. All right, so here in the Unity IDE, I created a new scene. And in the new scene, I placed the prefab that represents our storage facility or the storage room. And basically what I have done is that I have removed the animator controller from it. And I'm going to show you guys how easy it is to actually create animations for any custom objects that you might have in your scene. So the first thing you need to do is go to Windows, come down to Animations and select Animation. You will receive or you will get this pop-up animation window. And from here, you have the option to create a particular animation. So once we go ahead and click this, it'll tell us where to store that. So let's go ahead and say door open demo animation. Then let's click save. And what Unity does is that it would automatically create an animator, right? An animator and attach the animator component to that selected object that we want to animate. And basically now in our animation window, what you need to do is add the properties that are of interest as far as doing the animation. So let's go ahead and add the properties. And for this particular case, we are interested in adding the position transform property of the door in the hierarchy, right? So let's go ahead and click plus, and this will record and start recording the actual position uh, of the door in the given duration. The duration by default is like 1 minute, right? So this is pretty long for what we want to do. We can go ahead and animate it, perform the animations, and then we can scale down the actual length of the animation. So let's go ahead and animate the door open. What you're going to do is we want to make sure that we select the actual object we want to animate. In this case is the door object under the root storage. And then basically over here, what we'll do is click on record. So this captures the position of the door at this particular keyframe, like at the beginning of the animation. And then basically what we want to do is that we want to go all the way to the end over there. So we're going to go all the way to the end, and we want to record the position of the door by the time we get to the final keyframe. In this case, it's a very simple animation. So all we need is 2 keyframes, the beginning and the end. All we are doing is moving the door up and down. In this case, we are just moving it down. And then we are going to use the same animation and then invert it to simulate moving it back up. Okay, so let's go ahead and move the door to the location that we would desire. Let's say put it right here. And this is it. We are done. So if I go ahead and stop this and click back and then say play, it's as easy as that. We just simulated a door opening, in this case, sliding downwards into the ground using 2 keyframes, the beginning state of the door and then the ending state of the door. And then in between, basically what will happen is that Unity will do the interpolation of it. Okay, that's it. Very simple. So let's go ahead and stop this and go back to our storage room. And we can double click this animator controller that was created when we created this animation and associated with this particular object. If you double click this, we open it up, you would get this empty state machine. So by default, it would include the first animation that we have created. So if we go ahead and run this scene now, you would notice that the door will open. So when doing the recording, usually it takes some time for the runtime to kick in. There we go. So at runtime, it's basically performing what it's supposed to do. The only thing is that it's in a loop. So the next thing we want to do is actually select the animation and make sure that we disable this loop time. So we don't want the animation to keep on looping, right? Sometimes you want the animation to keep on looping. In that case, you do want this loop time to be enabled. So it would automatically loop back to the first frame after it's completed. In this particular case, we don't want to do that. So we have to disable this. So let's go ahead and disable this. And let's click run one more time. There we go. This is a better behavior. Now, what we want to do is go back to our animator, and we can use the same animation, basically. We can use the same animation. So you can drag and drop the animation in here. This is referring to the same animation. If you select the state, the node that represents the animation state, what we want to do over here, we can change the name. So we can say door close demo anim. So that's an internal naming for the state machine, right? It doesn't actually affect the animation itself. You're still referencing the same animation clip. The only thing that we are going to do is that we are going to invert this. Instead of saying +1, we are going to do -1. Okay. The next thing we want to do is have a transition between one state to the next state. So in order for you to do a transition between one state to the next state, you would select the node or the state that you're in currently, and you want to make a transition, right? So you would select transition, and then you would click the other state or the other node that you want to go to. Okay, it's very easy. And then basically, if you click the edge, this is called an edge. If you click on the edge, you will get the properties for the edge. And one of the properties is a condition, like when do I change my state, right? This is the parameter that we were been talking about in our previous video. So in this particular condition parameter, we need to create one. So let's go up here and create a Boolean one. And then we called it open, if I'm not mistaken, right? You can call it whatever you want. So we are going to name it open. And basically we go back to the transition. And from the transition over here, you can say, okay, we would go to the close state if and only if the open variable is going to be false. Okay. We need to add one more state here, and that's the idle state. So we want the door to be idle, meaning that it's at its rest state, right? And then when the parameter, in this case, the open parameter turns to true, then what we are going to do is basically trigger the next state and so forth. So let's go ahead and create an idle state animation as well. So it's a good practice over here. So let's go back to our window animation. Okay, so when you're back in the animation window, what you want to do is go to this drop down over here. It currently shows you which animation clip you're on, if there's any animation clip available. And what we want to do is create a new one, right? So click on create a new one, and we are going to call this door open, or actually not open, door idle demo anim, right? Yes. Okay, so now that we have created a new clip, we need to start animating this. So let's add the property. In this case, it's going to add the same door property over here. And again, we are interested in the position. And in this particular case, we just recorded both of the states or both of the keyframes are going to be the same, right? So we are not changing any of the position as far as the Y axis is concerned. Okay, so this is how we would create an idle state. And then if we stop recording it, and if we play, there we go, right? So we have two keyframes, everything staying constant as far as positioning of that particular object's transform is concerned, and we are good to go. Now let's go back to our state machine and notice that the door idle demo animation was automatically placed here. So it does that for you, but sometimes if it doesn't do that, you just drag and drop it in there. And then what we want to do, instead of having the door open demo anim as the default state, we want to make the idle as the default state, right? So whenever the actual state machine starts, we want to get into the idle state. And then if a particular condition is met, in this case, the condition happens to be the open parameter. And if that's set to true, then we want to transition to the open state. And then if the open states, if the open condition turns to false, we want to transition from door open to what? To door closed. And then once the door is closed, we can transition back into idle. Now, this transition going from the closed to the idle, we technically don't need to have any conditions because what we want to, like as soon as the door closes and that particular animation clip has finished, then we transition to the idle state. Okay, so this works perfectly actually. So if we go to our scene and we click play, you will notice that our door currently is in the idle state, which it's supposed to be, right? And then as soon as I enable the open parameter, it transitions to the open state, right? And then as soon as I send the signal to close the door, it transitions to the closed state and then goes back to the idle state. All right, very cool. It's as simple as that. And then we, of course, saw the code and how the code actually handles things. Usually there's a trigger, some sort of a trigger inside the code. In our case, it's the collider. So on when the player or the collector enters the space that's defined by the collider for this object, when that's detected, then basically parameters, the open parameter is set in the C# code to whether open it or to close it. Very cool. All right, I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. So hopefully that was interesting and showed you guys the basic concepts again as far as doing animations within Unity. Of course, if you need to do much more sophisticated animations, you can do it in Unity if you prefer, but there are better tools to do that, like 3D Studio Max, Maya, Blender. Those are the real modeling and animator tools. Unity is more of a game engine that brings everything together. And also it provides you with some options and abilities to perform some, limited kind of animations to get started. All right, having said that, have a good day and see you guys next time.